Welcome back to TV Show Review. This is episode 4. I know it's been a good couple weeks since the last one I aired. Well, month actually, yeah. Been almost a month. But yeah, finally gotta do this. In this episode of TV Show Reviews, episode 4, I'm gonna review Legends of Tomorrow. Yep, the second spin-off of the DC Universe. Yep. Well, DC CW Universe. Started just right last year. Yeah, only started just early last year. You're thinking third season is going for 3 years. Not necessarily. The series made its debut in January of last year. Now, each season has always had more and more episodes. Now the reason why these episodes are this particular amount because of the budget they have to spend basically on the special effects for the show. Excuse me. That's the only reason why. The first season is 16 episodes. The second season was originally going to be 14 episodes, but because the second season got good ratings, it was increased to 17 episodes, and this current season is going to air for 18 episodes. Yeah, it's going to end before Arrow and Flash. That's just the way it works when it comes to these things. Yep. Yeah, and the starring characters they had for the opening season was Martin Stein, Jefferson Jackson, Captain Cold, Heatwave, White Canary, Hawkman, Hawkgirl, Rip Hunter. Can't forget him. That's it. Just these 7 people. But Hawkman got killed off in episode 2, disappeared for a while, had a reincarnation show up in the last 2 episodes of the season, turned against the main villain, and then him and Hawkgirl left after the events of season 1. And they were never mentioned again. No, seriously. Hawkman and Hawkgirl were dropped from the show after the first season. In the case of Hawkman, they credited basically he was going to be in this whole series, or at least this whole season, but he only appears for a few episodes, and that's it. Which I think was quite stupid. But yeah, and this season basically had their base operations be a time ship called the Wave Rider, and Rip Hunter is still a Time Master, only for this season. Then they have him as a Time Agent season 3, which I'll get to that in a few minutes. The main villain of season 1 was Vandal Savage, the immortal suit villain who started out as an enemy of the Alan Scott Green Lantern. Which I'm like, okay, and I love who they chose. He was a Dutch actor. He's still alive, by the way. He looked like Vandal Savage, though wasn't much to him in his initial debut in the 2-parter Legends of Yesterday and Legends of Tomorrow, the 2-part crossover, which was the second crossover the Arrowverse had, which led to this very series. Yeah, but this series get a little more character, and they've really developed it a little bit more better. But this season also had the appearances by some other characters. They had a reference to Kanjar Rowe, who was started as an enemy of the Justice League, also enemy of Adam Strange, who's a cosmic alien. Yeah, he made his first appearance by trying to turn the Justice League into slaves. I'm not kidding. That's what Gardner Fox did to the character. Yeah. Now these were the recurring characters in season 1. Of course, they had Green Arrow and Black Canary, obviously, the original Black Canary in the show. On the Arrowverse, they used in episode 1. As far as I can tell, Oliver did come back a little later. I will get to that in a minute. Let's see. We also had Zaman Druce, who was basically Rip's mentor. That is the end of the season. Damien Dark, who appeared for 1 episode, but later became a regular in season 3. Now, these were the characters they introduced in season 1. They were guest stars. Of course, Black Canary, obviously. Louis Snart, who is the abusive father of Captain Cold and Golden Glider. Yeah, but on Flash, he was played by Michael Ironside. Yeah, they had a younger version of the character. They also have Vantila Bostic, who was in the comics member of the Doom Patrol, In the show, she tried to become one half of Firestorm, even though technically there already was Firestorm. Yep. We also have Vibe, who also appeared for the crossover that happened in Season 2. Grant Wilson, one of the two sons of Deathstroke. Connor Hawke, Gilbert, where's another ship? Let's see, Ra's al Ghul, Talia al Ghul, though they do set up basically when Talia al Ghul appears in this season, they set up basically that they reference something in the episode that Talia shows up in with Ra's, who was played once again by Matt Noble in his final appearance as Ra's. They do reference do references at the end of season 6, season 5 Arrow, where Talia was told that she needed to go to Lian Yu for some reason, and basically the episode season 1 of this season, an episode that basically they featured the League of Assassins in the 50s, at least 1960 anyways. That's basically that's basically what Talia's referencing in the episode. We also have appearances by Perdigadon, who actually is a JLA villain. JSA villain. I am not kidding about this. He was a kid. I have no idea. He would make an excellent villain later this season. We also have Jonah Hex, who actually appeared for an episode of season 2. Quentin, obviously. Felicity. Nyssa. I think so. We also have the first live action appearance of Rex Tyler, aka Our Man. We also have Carissa Stein, who is Martin Stein's wife, one of the daughters of Vandal Savage, Cassandra Savage. I should point out though that the actor who plays, and this was pointed out to me by Merge Yawson, the actor who plays Rex Tyler is the guy who was the main actor in White Collar. I'm not kidding. The guy who played the main character played Rex Tyler. Excuse me. Who said pretty much the characters in season 2. Mm-hmm. Now, each episode, they pretty much were in different decades. In the first 3 episodes, they were in 1975. Of course, there was a younger version, Martin Stein, who appeared in those 3 episodes. He later showed up in season 2. We also have episodes set in the 50s, which, by the way, just by fun fact, the director of that episode was the guy who directed who directed the film Gremlins. Yep. We also have films set. We also have episodes, I believe, set in the. I'm trying to remember. I believe there was one set in the 80s. Of course, that was Cold War Russia. That's where the whole thing with Firestorm came about. And yeah, the reason why that came about because apparently Vandal Savage in the 70s basically actually saw Firestorm like, hey, I want to create a Russia version of Firestorm. So that's pretty much what he does next episode. And this was a quick little 2-parter. They had an episode where they met Jonah Hex, his second ever live action appearance. Basically, first one is a Jonah Hex film. I kind of think though that basically this appearance here in this appearance in season 2, would lead to another Jonah Hex comic book. As far as I know, there has not been. Well, there's been one Jonah Hex comic book, a one-shot. Yep, a one-shot. I should point out though in season 1. With the exception of the Atom and Firestorm, nobody puts on their costume. I am not kidding. This is a recurring trope of the entire series, where a lot of the time the characters don't wear their damn costumes. In the case of White Canary, her original attire in Season 1, aside from the pilot, the only other time she wears this costume is in the season finale. Rest time, she wears regular street clothes. It's the same thing with the rest of the characters. They just wear their normal clothes. Well, I think Hawkgirl does have her wings come out once. But aside from that, that's really it. The Time Masters basically are complete dicks, basically, of how they're portrayed. They had one episode where they fought against Time Pirates. Not kidding, they had an episode, that's the episode featured that's where they referenced Ken Jaro. Now, I think Perdigadon can make a good villain for a future season because he's an interesting villain in the comics. Because this guy literally tries to rewrite history, basically him trying to take over the world. Yeah, I would think definitely they would bring this character back. Because it's great potential for him. I don't like the fact they started him as a villain. Yeah. Another really good episode of season 1 was the episode set in Star City 2046, which they kind of referenced this particular episode a couple times in the season 1 and referenced it recently in season 3. This is the episode where you first get a chance to see the son of John and Sarah, and John and Lila, who was John Jr., which they kind of basically made that into regular canon due to Flashpoint, where they erased Sarah and replaced it with John Jr. Yep. And also get a chance to see Smoke Technology, which that building did show up during the crossover during episode 100 of Arrow, as sort of the place where they needed to go to because the building doesn't technically exist. We also have Stephen Amell reprising his role on the show in one particular episode of season 1 in 2046, where he pretty much portrays Green Arrow. He pretty much plays the Green Arrow version of Green Arrow from Dark Knight Returns. Not kidding. The one with one arm. Now in the comic, Superman fried off his arm. That's what happened in Dark Knight Returns. In the show, Grant Wilson, aka the original Ravager, who is a creation of Mark Wolfman and George Perez, he appears for this one episode, and he's the one who chops off his arm. I am not kidding. He tries to do the same thing with Connor Hawke, aka John Diggle Jr. And their base they use actually that you see this particular episode, I believe is the base up the top of my head. I think this is supposed to be the current base they use right now, which they've been using since I think season 4. Yeah, since season 4 they've been using this base as their base operations. The thing that's underneath like an office building. Yeah, they've used this thing as their base operations. And I should point out, though, the recurring joke for every single base operations they have is that they keep forgetting to change the locks. Because everybody keeps breaking into the Arrow Cave. Not kidding. Almost everywhere the Arrow says to the base operations, somebody breaks in. It's kind of the same thing on the Flash, where the security is terrible. Legends of Tomorrow, the security is actually a lot more tighter on the ship. How to defeat Vandal Savage? Well, they kill him off in 3 time periods. Not kidding. They kill him off in the 50s, the 70s, and they kill him off, I believe, in 2016. Yeah, they kill him off in 2016, where he tries to detonate a bomb over, I think it's supposed to be Central City. How they defeat him is one of the most bizarre ways I have ever seen a villain defeated in 3 different time periods. Having Sarah kill one of them basically by snapping the guy's neck. And having the last one killed by Hawkgirl with a dagger. Yep. That's simply the way it is. The season ended with Rip Hunter basically bringing a version of Wave Rider, and you see him. He says, "I'm Rex Tyler. I'm a member of the Justice Society of America." When I first I'm like, wow, the JSA is gonna make an appearance in the show, and they only appear for a few episodes of season 2. Yep. And of course, season 2 they bring back Jonah Hex, and of course the young Martin Stein. Basically, this was about 11 years afterwards. Actually, it was actually 12 years after their last time I saw him. Of course, they make references to Star Trek Next Generation, and of course, Heatwave hating the 80s. Yep, that's really the way it is. Mm-hmm. Now, in season 2, who were the main villains? There are 4 of them. You have Reverse Flash, Malcolm Merlin, aka the Dark Archer, Damien Dark, and Captain Cold. Captain Cold died in season 1. Basically, this is a version that Reverse Flash pulled out of time before he met up with the Legends. Yep. Damien Dark got pulled out of time in 1987. Yeah, I think it was 1987. Yeah, I think it was. It was another episode in the 80s as well. But the episode when he was pulled out of the 80s, this is by far the most funniest thing. This episode opens as basically a Miami Vice ripoff. Basically, you have Damien Dark driving the car that Don Johnson drove in the Miami Vice series. I am not kidding. He even dresses like Don Johnson did. It is so freaking hilarious. And the way they started off the season is they start off in 1942 New York City, and they meet with Albert Einstein. Yep, this is the season when they meet real life people. This is not a joke. And their JSA is consist of Our Man, Vixen, this is the grandmother of the modern day Vixen, Though that Vixen did appear for one episode so far this current season. We also have Dr. Midnight, who was black, who was basically the original Dr. Midnight, but he's written by a black actor. As far as I know, out of the 3 people who've been Dr. Midnight, only the second one is black, and that was from Infinite Inc. Let's see. We also have, let's see, what was his name? He's the son of Obsidian. He's the son of Alan Scott, which they do reference he is canon to the show, but for some stupid reason they can't feature him in the show because, well, we have Green Lantern in the movies. God forbid we have Alan Scott in the series. I'm trying to think who else was part of this lineup. Let's see. Oh yeah, Stargirl. I have no idea why she's doing there in the 40s. Yeah, that honestly made no sense. Trying to think, was there anybody else who was part of the Oh yes, Commander Steel, a character who has never been part of the JSA. He was part of the All-Star Squadron, but never part of the JSA. And he's a character created by Jerry Conway. Yep. Obsidian was created by Roy Thomas. Our Man and Dr. Midnight basically made debut back in the 40s. Stargirl was a creation of Jeff Johns. And as for Vixen, this version of Vixen is original to the show, but Vixen is a creation of also Jerry Conway. Yep, so you have 2 Jerry Conway characters. And they appear for the first 2 episodes, so they later return later on. Like, they have Dr. Midnight appear in a version of Detroit, which is based upon the version of Detroit from RoboCop. I am not kidding about this. They have Commander Steel show up, basically part of the NASA space program in the 70s, and basically help out with the Apollo 13 program. Yep. And here's the thing. The main plot thing of this season was that the Legion of Doom, which is basically what... oh yeah, they also introduced another new character season. They introduced Citizen Steel, though it's a second one. This is Nate Haywood, who's actually another character who's created by Jeff Johns. The previous, the first and second people who basically are sort of the other version of Steel, not the one for Superman. Those are creation of Jerry Conway. The second version, who was actually, get this. Now they have where Hank Haywood, where in the show he's the son of, well, I think it's supposed to be Hank Haywood Jr. He's the son of the original Hank Haywood, who was Commander Steel. In the comics, this particular Hank Haywood was actually I think he was a relative of Nate Haywood. Though in the comics it was Hank Haywood III. In the show you have Hank Haywood Jr. So there's that. He appears for one episode. Though Commander Steel actually dies. Yeah, Commander Steel dies. As for Stargirl, she uses her pieces of the Spirit Destiny to create Camelot. I am not kidding about this. She creates Camelot and she falls in love with the guy who was King Arthur. And also in the episode, at the end of the episode, Sarah makes out with Queen Guinevere. Not kidding. Also, she does something very similar to this at the start of the season, where she's basically dealing with the Queen of France. Not kidding, because the character's bisexual, so have her make out with a bunch of women. Ratings. I guess people love that. Yeah. But in the case, they also had another episode where they were set in 1920 Chicago, where they met Al Capone and Elliot Ness. Yeah, so much untouchable references in this episode. Yeah, it was so freaking good. This is also the first time you get a chance to see Malcolm Merlyn in this series. And of course, the references stuff happened in Arrow, like sabotaging the Queen's Gambit and killing Sarah. Yep, they referenced those 2 things, which I thought was really nice. In the case of the Apollo 13 episode, they actually had an actor portray one of the astronauts from the Apollo 13 program. Let's see. What else is there? Let's see. Oh yeah, they introduced Quentin Turbo. They had him show up for an episode. Baron Kreuziger, who basically, I think, became Captain Nazi. Yeah, he was Captain Nazi. Let's see. What else? We also have a version. We also have George Washington show up for an episode. This was awesome. And Rip Hunter Rip Hunter was brainwashed because he was sort of basically mind was crazy. This was after the George Lucas episode. We'll get to it in a minute. He was sent back in time to kill George Washington before Valley Forge. Not kidding. So that was interesting. Yeah. And also having people like George Lucas and J.R. Tolkien show up in the show was awesome. Though in the case of J.R. Tolkien, they actually tied into something I don't think actually happened in real life. Something to deal with the Spear of Destiny. Of course, this was later, the end of the season, basically led to stuff in season 3, which is what they always do. Now, in the case of the George Lucas episode, they made references to Indiana Jones and Star Wars. And apparently, because George Lucas doesn't make movies, the Atom and Steel can't basically suit up. Basically, the Atom suit disappeared, and Hank can't middle up. They had also one episode where they went to feudal Japan, where they actually met a real-life evil warlord. Yeah, this Daimyo. Yeah, turns out the guy really was a dick. I looked it up. Basically, this is a real-life person, and this guy did die, but I highly doubt he was killed while wearing the Atom's exosuit. But a lot of stuff they say about this guy is true. And they also protect the family, who is basically the ancestors of the character modern day known as Katana. Yep. Well, actually, basically, it's her husband's family. But I thought that was really nice. Basically, in the Atom, Ray, who actually has met Katana present day, he was like, "What's your family name?" And they say, Yashimitsu. Who actually is these people are the ancestors of Katana. So basically, the time quake was basically to prevent the extinction of Katana. So indirectly, we have Katana referenced in Legends of Tomorrow, even though she never appeared on the show. Yep. Let's see. In the Jonah Hex episode, you bring Quentin Turbo for his second live action appearance. Though the actor portrayed him did a lot better job than John Malkovich. At least his plot was a lot more interesting. And this was also the episode right after the whole feudal Japan episode, where they basically found a bunch of Dwarf Star, which is the element that makes the Atom suit. Though in the comics, it basically inside of his belt. In the show, it's basically laced in his suit, so he gets a new version of the suit because the first one gets destroyed. And instead of destroying it, they basically let him keep all of it. And they also basically, before they revealed the kind of new Atom suit, which is a slight upgrade from the previous suit, they give Nate Haywood his suit, and out of the entire season, he only wears it once. Actually, I think he wears like twice the entire season. He wears during the Invasion crossover, and he wears in the finale. In the current season, he's only worn a couple times. Yep. Let's see. Anything else noteworthy? One of the best things about season 2 is basically the villains. They're so interesting. And also, interesting thing, they have Reverse Flash has something ties into the current season of Flash, where Reverse Flash is running from Black Flash, who in the show, basically the character who became Black Flash was Hunter Zolomon, aka Zoom, the second Reverse Flash from the comics. Well, in the show he's called Zoom, which his voice was dubbed over by Tony Todd. Yep. So it was so neat to see Black Flash, though the character gets killed off at the end of season 2 of Flash. Though in the case of now one thing that this series is basically it's good at is that sometimes basically they have certain scenes that set up some stuff in the shows, like right after Malcolm Merlyn gets defeated at the end of this season, he's later seen in Arrow, basically like, okay, like, wow, this is like right after Legends of Tomorrow ended. And in the case of the previous season, they had basically Quentin in the bunker, which actually they actually set up in, I think it was in the end of that particular season, I think it was season 4, where they set that up, and that leads into directly to the episode. So they have some stuff basically set from other shows, or in the case of vice versa, which is a shared universe, so why not? And then basically they did something weird. They had the alternate version of the characters, but they had this Doom World episode where apparently Damien Dark basically is the mayor of Star City. Eobard Thawne is the CEO of Star Labs, and what does Malcolm get? He gets his hand back, his wife and son are alive, and his daughter loves him. That's all he gets, and his company is back too. Uh, in case you're wondering how did Malcolm lose his hand, he lost that in season 4 of Arrow. Basically, the hand was chopped off by Oliver. Yep. Yep. That's basically what happened there. Um, Reverse Flash was later killed by Black Flash, and because of the whole alternate versions of the main characters basically interacting with the regular ones, basically caused space-time continuum to shatter and create anachronisms, basically stuff that's not supposed to be there, which basically leads into stuff in season 3. Season 1 was a okay season, has some good episodes here and there. Season 2 was a lot better. Now moving on to season 3. First season starts out basically, you have the end of the season, we have LA, basically, I think it's an alternate version of LA. Nope, it's regular present day LA. And the thing is, and the whole other things like dinosaurs, stuff not being there. Yeah, that's all fixed up in the first 2 minutes of the episode because in the previous season, Rip said, oh yeah, he's going to form some time agency. And then like 15 minutes later, bam, whole thing happens with LA. And I'm like, okay, so apparently this has been on for 5 years. I'm like, when the heck did this happen? Yeah, this came completely out of nowhere. And the Rip's like, okay, I relieve you of duty. And he took time. So later they took it back. Steel does wear his outfit he lives in Star City. No, sorry, he lives in Central City. Vixen went back in 1942, though she does come back in the next episode. Jefferson basically went to engineering school, till later dropped out because he missed working on a time ship. Martin doesn't do very much. Let's see, Ray works for a tech firm, and he tries to create a dating app. And what does McRory do? He goes down to a room and have a beer, and then all of a sudden he runs into Julius Caesar. I am not kidding. He beats the crap out of him, breaks his nose, and he tells him like, "Man, your salad sucks." I thought was so funny. And then they return him basically to his own time period, though he tries to indirectly try to change history. They go back and they basically beat the crap out of him and his soldiers. And of course, also in the episode, they also capture a new character named Avon Sharp. She gets captured. Yep. And it's like, oh, we had this guy called Malice. It wasn't until this week's episode we finally got a chance to see what the heck this guy is. I'll get to that in a minute. Let's see. What are episodes are there aside from the whole thing? Let's see. Let's see here. I know there's other stuff here. For the current season. I'm trying to think here. Let's see. Yeah. In the second episode, they go back in time to a circus in 1870, which I kind of thought maybe they would have met up again with Jonah Hex, but I guess not. It was the whole thing like that episode was kind of weird. And this character named someone named Fowler. Someone pointed out that it might be time travel from Legion Superiors. I have heard Legion Superiors is going to show up in the show. I'm not sure when, but I've heard they've been confirmed for showing up in this series, probably for this season. And the character they bring back is a character from the Vixen show, which shows up in the next episode. This is the episode they introduce Isis, who was from 2042. Oh yeah, and in her timeline, the United States is under martial law. Metahumans basically. If you're metahuman, if you're Muslim, basically it's legal for, yeah. They outlaw like a bunch of something like, seriously? What the heck is this? And Argus is basically, which is supposed to be a sort of an espionage agency operating in the shadows. They operate in full public view in this episode. I'm like, seriously? Really? Though the kind of hints that basically set up in this thing in Arrow. So there's that. They do get her after they break into an Argus black site, which I'm thinking, Argus Black Site. Yeah, this is also something they also had in Arrow Season 5, where this also almost caused Lila and John to almost divorce over this. Yeah, and they have an Argus one. Oh, and who was director of Argus? Never revealed. They never revealed who in this episode who's director of Argus this one, because I highly doubt Lila is at this point, because this is exactly like, I think it's 25 years in the future. So I highly doubt she's still head of Argus at this point. She might have retired. As for who's the head of Argus, who the heck knows? Yeah, and apparently there was a law passed, I think in 2020. They say they outlawed metahumans, which I thought was quite stupid. Yep. Kind of an oddball episode. Interesting episode, but yeah. The phone home was basically just a bunch of nods to E.T. And of course the 80s. Again, I love whenever they go to the 80s. And they meet Ray Palmer's mother. Yep. And get this. They actually are not there for some anachronism. They're there because of Ray Palmer. Yep. Ray Palmer apparently died, and it turns out the reason why he apparently died back in 1988 because he met up with a baby Dominator. Yep. Somehow this thing ended up in 1988 before they ended up in 2017, which is a bit bizarre. This was just a cool Halloween episode, and I love the fact that the young Ray Palmer got a chance to wear a sort of like a makeshift Atom suit, which was so funny. Though I think the suit was kind of a nod to Power of the Atom suit. Partial nod. And now we have the most recent episode of the series, which aired just this week, where they're in Victoria-era London, 1895, and they met with Rip Hunter. First time in a couple episodes they met up with him. And they're with the Time Bureau. And he's looking for Malice stuff with vampires. And there was this woman who's sort of a Saiyan woman. I think that's how you pronounce these people, basically, who speak with the dead. Yeah, well, apparently she's talking to a version of Osiris's dead brother. Now, in the show, they do keep the fact that Isis is Muslim in the show, which I think she's like that in the comics, because in the comics she's from Egypt. Yeah, I don't know why they have her from the future, but that's basically what it is. She's actually the one person who's actually from the... Because most of the characters, exception of Vixen and her, are mostly from the present-day time period. Vixen's from the 1940s, and of course, Isis is from the 2040s. Yep. And apparently she's staying on board because there's a connection between her totem and Vixen's totem, which they kind of thought was some going out of whack, and they met with an ancestor. Yeah, it turns out it's getting powerful because it's getting more powerful. The reason it activates is because it's more powerful threats coming. And they finally have Malice kind of make an appearance through a puppet, and the voice is voiced by John Noble. I can't wait to see exactly what this character looks like. Now, I heard about this character Malice. I'm like, who the heck is this character Malice? In the case of villains in the previous two seasons, at least I have heard of these characters. I've read their debut appearances. But in the case of this one, I have no idea who this character is. But I love who's voicing him. Yep. And they resurrect. And also in the episode, Damien Darhk is resurrected. And somehow he ends up in 1895 London. My guess, because they anachronism, I'm like, dead body Damien Darhk. I'm like, why is that something? Oh yeah, because he died in season 4. And he gets resurrected. And the only reason I know is from 2016 because he's wearing a type of watch made by Palmer Technologies. Yep. And also Mr. Terrific makes a guest star appearance in this episode, though, out of costume, though. But it's nice to see the guy. But so far this season had a very weak start. Unlike the first two seasons, which had a really good start to them, this one had the weakest premiere. It's like, oh, you have Rick be a dick and Time Agency, and they jump ahead 3 months later. Yeah, it's one of the most bizarre. And also, Isis Zeri actually puts on her Isis costume for the first time in the series. Yep. Okay, so I'm glad the fact they made her costume, and also White Canary gets an updated costume, which I think that's great. But otherwise, though, this is a great series. So it's getting better this season, but season 2 so far is the best one. There's another thing I don't like the fact besides most of the characters don't wear their costumes. I'm no mind with Heatwave because he doesn't have a costume, but their characters do have costumes, and they choose not to wear them for some stupid reason. And also, none of the characters go by their code names. As a matter of fact, when you have Reverse Flash in the show, he is never called Reverse Flash. He's always called Thawne, which kind of bugs me. I'm like, this is Reverse Flash. The viewers know this is Reverse Flash. And do any of the characters call him Reverse Flash? No, they do not call him Reverse Flash. It's the same thing with Captain Cold. They don't dress him by his code names. I'm like, none of the characters are by the code names at all in the whole show. I get maybe in the field they might do that, But on the ship, they basically call each other by real names. But in the field, they should call each other by their code names. Like, the Captain Cold would use them. Hey, I'm Captain Cold. Nope. He says, no, I'm Leonard Snart. Oh yeah, and kind of revealed in the show that kind of when he died, he was actually in his early 40s, which is basically the same age as the actor who, where Miller, the guy who betrays him. Yeah. Also in season 1, they had a young version of Nick Roy from right after he burned down his house in season 1. Let's see. They also have baby versions of Captain Cold, Martin Stein, a few other characters. They had Golden Glider appear off screen. Don't know why. Well, actually, there was a reason why, because the actress at that point was doing Frequency. As far as the show has been canceled, so she might basically be able to come back to the Arrowverse. It's a possibility. Who knows? I hope they really develop this villain Malice. Hope they reveal what the heck this guy looks like, because I have no idea what this character looks like, and this is the first time they actually have a villain for the series who I've never heard of before. And I've heard a lot of villains, because I read a lot of comic books. Okay, so that's really it for this one. Stay tuned for episode 5 when I get a chance to do, and I'm going to talk about Supergirl after I catch up with the current season, okay? But until then, I will see you there. Bye.